All right, fellas. Favorite Ultimate Warrior moment. BRF, you go first.
Oh gosh. Well, the Ultimate Warrior is probably the most overrated superstar in the history of the WWE. But if I had one moment that I would say is like my favorite, and it's kind of bittersweet, it's the moment where he came at the WWE, and he was like they put him in the Hall of Fame after WrestleMania 30,
Yep.
and he had his moment on Monday Night Raw where he talked to the crowd and almost like a full circle moment, and then he died like days later after that, and it was just it was an unfortunate thing, but that moment on Monday Night Raw for me did it because I feel like every guy that had his status that was unceremoniously left WWE deserves an opportunity for like a second chance and like if you didn't leave on like horrible, like if you didn't do anything horrible to get put out the door, if you just left, you didn't agree with what Vince McMahon was doing. He got an opportunity. He got a full circle moment to come back, talk to the WWE universe, and just thank them for unwavering support. And it was just unfortunate he didn't get to live much longer to kind of see the WWE universe really reciprocate that love back to him. Um, but yeah, I would go my all time favorite Warrior moment, even though it was bittersweet, would definitely be that Monday Night Raw after the Hall of Fame where he got to come back and got to really speak his mind and let the fans know how he felt, and how grateful he was that they still knew him and that they knew him and they still recognized him and they loved him. I would say either that or probably WrestleMania where he beat Hulk Hogan for the World Wrestling Federation Championship. I mean, he came in as the Intercontinental Champion. Hulk Hogan came in as the World Wrestling Federation Champion, and the fact that Hulk Hogan was willing enough to put somebody over. Shout out to Hulk Hogan. God rest his soul. God rest his soul as well. I mean, hey, just saying it for what it's worth. But but yeah, yeah. Like I said, I will stand on business that I think Ultimate Warrior is the most overrated superstar of all time. But I feel like the fact that he was still a big name for the company, and he was still one of the faces that moved and pushed the merch around, in the golden era of the '80s. If it wasn't Hulk Hogan, like who was that next guy in line that was really going to be that fan favorite and was really going to push that merch and really be that face? I mean, it was the Ultimate Warrior. So definitely, yeah, but I'll definitely say my all time favorite moment is that Monday Night Raw after the WrestleMania 30 where he just came back and got to speak his mind, and I was happy for him. I was definitely happy for him. I just hated he didn't get to see it through much longer. But yeah, rest in peace to rest in peace to the Ultimate Warrior, and that would definitely be my favorite Ultimate Warrior moment of all time. Was that Monday Night Raw where he got to come back and talk to the people.
It's interesting that you brought that up, BRF, because again, the WWE, I didn't know they would ever bring him back given the controversial comments he made about the LGBTQ community because
Right.
he burned a lot of bridges, not only with the LGBTQ community, but everyone within the WWE. I mean, he was not the most liked figure back then, and I'm being very generous when I say that. And of course, back in SummerSlam, remember, he wrote a letter to Hulk Hogan, wrote a letter to Vince McMahon. I apologize. Unless he was treated financially and creatively like Hulk Hogan, he wouldn't show up to work. And look, Vince McMahon, say whatever you want about Vince. He was willing to forgive, move on, and welcome Warrior into the Hall of Fame. And that, I mean, say what you want about Vince McMahon, but I will give him credit though for making amends for that. So I will give him that. Big fella.
A lot of moments for me because I used to want to lift weights and be just like those guys when I was a kid. So I'm just being very, very honest. A lot of guys, look, let's just keep it 100. The NWA was like, look, the National Wrestling Alliance was like the NBA when it came to wrestling. They were the NBA of wrestling back in the 80s. To quote the great Jim Cornette, the WWE was like the Harlem Globetrotters. It was pure entertainment. If you wanted pure wrestling, you had to go to Ric Flair and the NWA side. If you wanted entertainment, you went to the WWE, and that's what they represented. There was not, if you wanted good matches back then, you had to stick to the Intercontinental. You had to stick to the Intercontinental Championships. Those provided the best championship matches. So let's just keep it all the way above. During the golden age of wrestling, before they transitioned over into the new generation, the Intercontinental Championship, those where you was going to find the knockdown drag out matches. They were the cruiserweight. They were the cruiserweights before the cruiserweights were the cruiserweights. The Intercontinental division, I would say. But for the Warrior, hey, beating the Honky Tonk Man, the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in the WWE history at the time, beating Ravishing Rick Rude when he beating Ravishing Rick Rude, man. Look, we talk about Ric Flair as a heel. Ravishing Rick Rude as a heel was the coolest heel that you will ever want to see. I never forget when Rick Rude came out. One of the smoothest moves I ever seen. Remember when Rick Rude came out to Sade, the smooth operator? He walked to the ring. Yeah. I'll never forget, man. And look, right before he would come to the ring, right as he come to the ring, what I'd like to have now is for all you high-rolling Atlantic City sweat hogs, keep the noise down as I take my robe off and give the ladies a good look at the sexiest man alive. Hit the music. And that was Rick Rude. So when you talk about Ric Flair as heel work, Rick Rude was just as, and he was bigger and smoother too. He was smoother in the ring. So, yeah, man, when he beat Rick Rude and Honky Tonk Man, that was good. All of the vignettes with Jake the Snake, I hate that couldn't go into fruition, and that he held Vince up before that. God rest Ultimate Warrior soul. But those vignettes with the Jake the Snake Roberts and Papa Shango, those were legendary. Those were legendary vignettes. Those were legendary. Him being part of the Blade Runners with Sting. Yeah. You know, they were essentially the poor man's version of the Road Warriors. Two very big guys. Say all you want to about the Ultimate Warrior, man, but him and Sting became legendary. Usually in a tag team, let's just keep it 100. At any stage in a tag team, you have that one guy that you know is going to be a star, and this other guy, he's just the other guy. He's the Marty Jannetty of it. He's the Marty Jannetty. And with that tag team, you just knew that you had two hellified Hall of Fame stars in him and Sting. So seeing him and Sting be the Blade Runners, Fall Brawl, although it was kind of uneventful when him, Roddy Piper, and DDP teamed up to take on Team NWO and Team NWO Wolfpack, had Hogan running all out of the ring and all types of stuff. Man, Warrior, thank you very much for my childhood, man. Look, I know I'm kind of speaking through the lens of a child at this point because, yes, he wasn't the greatest wrestler. No, he wasn't, based on, a lot of locker room talk by the late, great Bobby the Brain Heenan, a little bit of everybody. He wasn't the greatest locker room guy, but I'm speaking through the lenses of me being a child. When I looked at the Warrior, when I looked at guys like that, like Tony Atlas, that made me want to get my ass up and go to the gym. I didn't want to be built like the football players or the basketball players. I looked at the wrestlers and said, I want to see veins sticking out of my arms. So at one point, it was almost like that. But yeah, I wanted to be like those guys. And look, if I could have it my way, I was a little bit taller and I wasn't 6 feet nothing, I would still want to become a wrestler. But I'm too old at this point. And guess what? Post-traumatic syndrome has me going. So I will say that. But Warrior, thank you for my childhood, man. And yeah, people are gonna say disparaging things, but to Flash's point, until you brought that up, I didn't even remember it at a certain point. That just goes to show you how wrestling fans do have selective memory. And shout out to Flash, one of the most brilliant people that I've worked with, especially the work he puts in on our pod, BRF. He brought that up a couple of weeks ago when Hulk Hogan passed. You know, when you think
Mhm.
about a lot of things that a lot of other guys have said or done, it's pretty much forgotten. But you know, because Hulk Hogan was such a big figure, you know, we remember it. But like I said, I had forgotten all about the speeches that he gave. I'm being honest with you. I have to admit that I had forgotten all about him because you really don't see it in social media. And
Yeah, that
things
was Warrior. That was Warrior's thing. He wanted to be a motivational speaker. He wanted to talk, and that was one of the things he wanted to do, including one of the words that was really interesting about him, Champ, destrucity.
yeah, I
Like
remember
you
that.
could be true to who you are while at the same time accomplish your goals.
Yeah,
And
he had a lot of great points. I mean, as far as Destrucity was concerned, I believe he was a little bit ahead of his time. He was a little bit ahead of his time. He was very, very smart, but I don't think the world was ready for what he was trying to bring as far as his wrestling is concerned. Now, as far as his political views and stuff like that, and
man,
you need that where it at. But hey,
he brought that on himself, kind of like with Hulk Hogan, with all the
yeah,
other things.
oh
But
yeah,
at the
man, look,
same, but at the same time, like you said, Champ, hey, if someone dies, look, he already dealt with his day of judgment.
yeah, he already dealing with his judgment. He on the day of judgment day. Look, I'm gonna just be real. On the day of the when the day I got to go see the judge, when I go see the judge, and he ain't finna ask me about what the hell Hulk Hogan had to say. And he gonna
Exactly.
ask me. He gonna ask me what you doing. What the hell was you doing out there eating all that damn food I told you not to eat? So that's just being real. So that's just how it goes. But that's the thing is, and look, man, whatever happened to respecting the dead, bro? I mean, there was a time where once a person passed away, you let it go. It's like they're no longer here to defend themselves anymore. Nowadays, everybody wants to speak still. But I digress. Look,
No, but that's a valid point, Champ. And to your
yeah,
point,
let's respect the dead. They're gone. They, like I said, they're not here to defend themselves. They're already meeting the judge. They're already meeting. They're already meeting the judge. They say when you pass and you leave this earth, you go and meet your judge. You're meeting your judgment. So you're going to meet the judge already. So I mean, whether you and who's to say, hey, and who's to say, who are we to say that one sin got you thrown into the darkness? Who are we to say that? I'm not finna say that. All the dumb
neither,
shit I did, no. All the dumb shit, no. I'm not finna say that. So
no, but Champ, but and also the BRF's point. Even though you and I we don't feel that way, but BRF, I can understand how BRF feels about Hulk Hogan or Terry Bollea, the human being, the person, just like how some people can feel about Jim Hellwig, the person, because what
yeah,
he said about the LGBTQ community, I thought it was deplorable.
I
But
thought it
And
was too.
I wanna throw a quick point in real quick as far as Hulk Hogan concerned. I think a lot of it, as far as like black people, why they feel the way they do about Hulk Hogan, the way they ride with Jeff Hardy. At one point, they rode like that for Hulk Hogan. They rode like that hard for Hogan. So it's like when that came out, as far as stuff he said, it almost felt like he betrayed him. You know what I'm saying? So that's probably why a lot of those feelings from black people to Hulk Hogan were what they were. Because black people, they loved them some Hulk Hogan. But then that came out and it's just like, man, you too. So I think that's a lot of the disdain. That's where a lot of the disdain came from. It felt like an act of betrayal. Like, dude, You are a lot of our childhood, but yet you feel this way about us. So I think that's a lot of it as far as like the Hulk Hogan situation is concerned. Because black people, they roll with that man. And then that came out and it just felt like, oh man, well, there he goes. So you know what I'm saying?
Well, but Warrior, one thing I did like about Warrior, the Thunder Buddies. And the things as a kid, with the cartoon stuff, that was kind of cool. And watch the episode on Vice's Dark Side of the Ring, The Ultimate War. I'm gonna watch that right after we finish the pod, man. It tells you a lot about Warrior, not only as a human being, as a person, but also everything that he was going through in his life. But big ups.